G'day you mob, Pete here, and this is another episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. So today I have a Goss episode for you where I sit down with my old man, my father, Ian Smissen, and we talk about the week's news, whether locally down under here in Australia or non-locally overseas in other parts of the world. Okay, and we sometimes also talk about whatever comes to mind, right? If we can think of something interesting to share with you guys related to us or Australia, we also talk about that in the Goss. So these episodes are specifically designed to try and give you content about many different topics where we're obviously speaking in English and there are multiple people having a natural and spontaneous conversation in English. So it is particularly good to improve your listening skills. In order to complement that though, I really recommend that you join the podcast membership or the academy membership at aussieenglish.com.au, where you will get access to the full transcripts of these episodes, the PDFs, the downloads, and you can also use the online PDF reader to read and listen at the same time. Okay, so if you really want to improve your listening skills fast, get the transcript, listen and read at the same time, keep practicing, and that is the quickest way to level up your English. Anyway, I've been rabbiting on a bit. I've been talking a bit. Let's just get into this episode, guys. Smack the bird, and let's get into it. All right, so how's it going?
Hey, good to be here. It's been a while.
What's going on?
Been a while since we've done one of these. I don't need to.
No one else knows that though, because we batch them.
I know.
They get them on a
regular basis. But
that's it.
My beard has grown, so that might be able
mine.
to tell that. So I haven't trimmed my moustache in about a week. So
I need to start changing my t-shirts between different recordings so that I think I wear the same clothes every day.
Exactly. I don't know what happens when you get to 50 something, and I'm way past that, where your moustache hair and your nose hair grows faster than any other hair on your head.
Yeah.
So
you just got to start trimming it.
I know. I trim about once a week usually, but I haven't for a while. So.
It sounds like that Billy Connolly joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, so we had a story last time that I wanted to get to, and we ran out of time because we were smashing it out. And it was about Australia's dingo fence and the changes in landscape that we're seeing on sides where there were dingoes versus where there were no dingoes. So I'm going to do my best to kind of remember what I've written down here. I just opened it up and I haven't read through my notes in about a month. But so yeah, the dingo fence in Australia was obviously put together or constructed in the, I've got to have a look, 20th century here.
Yes.
It's 5,600 kilometres long.
1920 or something.
Yeah, it goes across three states. 150 kilometres, traverses the red sand dunes of the Strzelecki Desert.
Yes.
And so the reason for putting this together, I believe, was to keep dingoes out of pastoral areas where they had sheep.
Grazing land. Yeah, sheep mostly.
So they were worried, I guess, about the dingoes taking not necessarily full-grown sheep or cows or anything like that, but the young,
lambs,
right?
Are the big problem.
Typically lambs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, this fence is obviously still there and still doing its job to some degree, mostly. I imagine.
I'm sure there are bits of it that have fallen down, but...
And, yeah, it was interesting. I think the basic thing, without going through all of this, the basic thing was that they had done some research on it recently, and some satellite photos were showing that there were differences on either side of the fence where there were dingoes and where there were no dingoes. And it turned out the side of the fence where there were no dingoes was actually suffering ecologically because kangaroos were at such a high abundance that they were eating out all of the plant cover. And so it's one of those unforeseen things where, you know, you're trying to do something that's positive for humans, where you want to get, you know, the best productivity you can out of your sheep. And you would imagine they're going to be eating the grass and any other plant material that they can. And you think, okay, well, I'll keep the dingoes out. But ironically, by keeping the predator out that may knock off, a handful of lamb out of your flock, a season or something, the kangaroos are coming in and effectively out-eating everything. So not just the sheep, but everything, right?
Exactly.
So you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot, where you're protecting yourself from... It's like treating the symptoms, not the...
Yeah, and that's, you're removing predators, but increasing competitors.
Yeah.
And so it's probably at best neutral. Yeah, it worked
Yeah.
in sense of dingoes are not eating lambs, but if sheep are dying because they have to compete with kangaroos for food, then
Well,
it sort of
and
defeats the purpose.
if you can't sell the lambs for as much or the sheep for as much because they don't have as much meat on them,
Yeah.
or they're not growing as much wool because they're malnourished because they're not getting enough food, then it's kind of like, I mean, you would have to obviously do the maths and work out, is it better to lose a few lambs but have higher quality product, you know, because they're healthier, or do you want a higher quantity but lower quality at the end of the day because they're malnourished? And so, I don't know, I just found this a really interesting, you know, finding, and they were showing, that I think it's being found more and more in modern times, right, that humans as a whole have pretty much gone through every single environment and wiped out the large predators.
Pretty much
Everywhere. I mean, you know, we still got things like the great white shark. Sharks in a lot of places, although they're under threat.
Yeah.
But
There are
cats.
lions in southern and eastern Africa, I think, are the exception to that.
Yeah.
But most big cats are struggling
population-wise.
Lions seem to be I think possibly because they're gregarious. They hang around in teams. Prides of lions makes them harder to get rid of. But they also just seem to be ubiquitous in southern Africa. So, whereas everything else seems to, like tigers are really struggling in Asia. Others like snow leopards and things are really suffering. Cheetahs went through a different problem, an evolutionary problem with a population crash a few thousand years ago. And their problem now is not so much humans interfering with them, but lack of genetic diversity. So,
well, that was that crazy thing we were learning about when we were doing biology at university, that you can, I think similar to even maybe Tassie devils are going through a similar sort of thing, hence their cancer, that you can transmit from one animal to another, which is one of the only contagious cancers, I think, out there. But with cheetahs, you can actually transplant skin grafts from one cheetah to the other.
So similar
because they're
genetically.
Their immune system doesn't recognize
They're
it as foreign.
effectively all like brothers and sisters.
Yeah. It's crazy. And it blows my mind too when you look into where cheetahs were originally, their distribution, right? Like, I think there's actually a population of them in Iran.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia, Iran.
Yeah, and they were even into, I think, potentially parts of Southeast Europe. Like in that sort of area.
Yeah, Turkey and places like that. It may well have been.
It's just crazy, right? And lions too. I think there were lions throughout there as well. The Roman Empire used to get them, and they didn't get them from sub-Saharan Africa, I don't think, right down in the south. They were getting them from up the north. But yeah, it's funny, these studies, I think I remember you and Richie, I interviewed him previously on the podcast. He's a professor from Deakin University.
He is.
Just became a professor this year, so congrats, Ewan. A full professor. But he does a lot of work on dingoes and ecology. And my supervisor from when I was doing my master's degree, Tim Jessup, was doing a lot of stuff on Komodo dragons. And I think these sort of ecologists are finding again and again and again that where you remove the top predators because humans think they're a danger, or that they're directly competing with humans for, say, your sheep and everything, that it actually ends up doing a great deal more damage because it degrades the habitat.
Yes.
Right? And one of the best examples was, I think, is it Yellowstone, where they reintroduced wolves?
Yes.
And they showed that it changed the course of rivers. Have you seen it? There's a documentary on it, I think, that's on Netflix or YouTube. But effectively what had happened was that I think humans had sort of just hunted wolves out of Yellowstone National Park in the United States of America.
Yeah.
And then the deer and moose and all the other sort of, herbivores were just having at it, wreaking havoc on the natural environment, like overeating, overgrazing.
Lakes and riverbanks.
That's destroying the riverbanks because they were no longer afraid of being predated upon, right? They'd become sort of naive and didn't have to worry about being constantly on the move and looking around, and their numbers had exploded. And the studies I remember too from biology was that you end up with sicker animals too in the population because they don't get weeded out. And so when the wolves were reintroduced back into Yellowstone, you started getting healthier populations of deer. I think that the studies were sort of particularly looking at, and that the deer were then constantly being moved on.
Yes.
They couldn't just sit in a single place and completely destroy it in terms of eating everything and just trampling the ground. And so it was really cool where I think they did follow-ups of these areas and showed how by putting the wolves back into that area, you regenerate all of the ecology and the diversity, the biological diversity that you need there to have a healthy environment.
Yeah, look, it's a sort of an old established principle of community ecology that top predators are extremely important for maintaining the balance of all sorts of other things that go on underneath them.
Yeah.
While they may not be, clearly they're not eating plants and they might not be eating little animals and things, but the fact that they are eating the larger herbivores and therefore maintaining, at least controlling the population size of those means that other environmental damage is not happening, and therefore other smaller animals are able to survive in their little micro habitats. And as soon as you remove those top predators, the big herbivores suddenly explode, and then they start damaging the rest of the environment, and everything else suffers. So it is one of those weird ones where you think, oh yeah, look, if we just remove a few sharks from
what's the harm
from the sea, what's the harm? And then you realise that sharks are actually eating some of the other fish that are controlling populations of other things and so on, and then it just sort of all gets out of whack.
Well, and Kosciuszko National Park is a big example of that with horses, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
I think horses, deer and goats are a big issue up there where they just have no natural predators.
Yeah.
And so they breed like crazy and are just destroying the ground. Also because I think all of those animals are hooved, right?
Yes.
So the soil isn't used to being compacted by their hooves in Australia, and a lot of the plants can't handle when the soil's been compacted and pushed down.
And they don't recover from trampling either.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's funny. What do you think of the Australians who are kicking up such a stink about us wanting to remove horses? And by remove, a lot of the time that means cull, because it's just impractical to try and catch 10,000 brumbies in the forest.
Yeah.
But do you find that it's kind of, I mean, we've probably talked about this before in the Goss, but it seems ironic to me that you'll have these people who kind of think cute and furry deserves protection whether or not it's native. Big, cute and furry. But we don't give a shit about the native animals, effectively, which are being indirectly affected or directly affected by this. Like the broadtooth rat was a good example. It's this really cute rat that looks like a guinea pig that just eats grass. Effectively, it's a herbivore, herbivorous rat. One of the only 100% herbivorous rat in Australia, and it lives in the same areas, but it makes these kind of like burrows through the grass undergrowth that just end up getting completely trampled. Yeah. And it's a gorgeous little native animal that people would love if they knew about it. But people would much prefer to think, we need horses here because it's, they're cute. They've been here for so long, 200 years. Yeah, what history. Exactly. Whereas this mouse has been here for a few million years. Yeah. But why do you think people get like that?
Oh, well, horses are a bit different from most things because I think there's, horses and humans have had thousands of years of relationship of domestication, using them for agriculture, using them as pets, using them for entertainment with, horse racing, using them for pulling, vehicles. So I think there is this long established relationship between humans and horses. So many people who have never even owned a horse sort of have a special place in their heart, I think, for horses as some sort of noble beast.
To pause you there, that is true. And it's so weird that you could argue we have the exact same analogous relationship with cows, with goats, with dogs, with cats, and yet the average person would probably not kick up the same kind of stink if you were talking about culling wild dogs, or culling goats, or culling bulls, or culling cats. They'd be like, "Oh, go have at it." But when it's horses, it's different.
I don't know. I can't explain it really. But yeah, it is. It's one of those things where the distinction between conservation and animal rights activists, where animal rights activists, and I'm not playing them down generically, but often fall into very specific, short-sighted views of the world of, we're going to save the horses and the mountain horses. Now, the mountain horses don't need saving. They're actually overpopulated.
They need saving from themselves because they're out eating themselves and starving.
It's like, there have been, not in the last couple of decades, but previously there used to be culls of koalas in some locations.
Because they were out eating the trees.
They're out eating the trees, and because they're so specific in their diet that they they can't just get up and move, kilometres away. They effectively live in little, ecological islands. And so they can't just sort of, there's, too much competition here. We'll get up and, look for another place. So they end up just eating themselves out and dying.
And that meant them effectively becoming emaciated, malnourished, and just falling out of the trees dead.
And suffering from disease and so on.
And dying a horrible slow death. And so much worse than a bullet.
Exactly.
Or however they were being
a lot of that culling was capture and release, moving them to other areas rather than shooting. But there were occasions, I think, where they were shot. Now, that's a aside, but people didn't sort of complain much about that because they looked at that and going, well, yes, there's an ecological reason to do this, but the same argument for horses just doesn't do it.
And they're not even native.
And look, I think there's also I really hesitate to do it, but it's almost like the American thing about the right to have guns. Is this?
I have the right to have
horses in my universe. That
I don't have horses
they are
my property.
Exactly. They're part of the mountain cattlemen.
I just want to know they're there.
Exactly.
Just make sure they're there.
Yeah.
So can we cull them and just tell you they're still there? Is that good enough?
So I think there is that sort of they're part of our history. We want to keep them. And
go buy a horse.
I know, it becomes tunnel visioned.
Go buy a horse.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
I can't imagine making that argument for any other animal.
No.
We've always had dogs, so I like knowing that dogs are out in the forest running amok and
killing things. Horses don't kill anything. Well, they actually do.
It's the vibe of the Australian environment.
Yeah.
Camels. I just need to know there are camels out there in the desert. I never go to the desert. Don't like camels. Don't own them.
I don't like them.
But I want to know that they're there. Yeah, anyway, so it was a good study about dingoes. Do you think that fence will ever get removed? Do you think it'll get torn down, or is it still, from your limited knowledge, having an effect?
Yeah, it seems to be having an effect. As you suggested, though, the effect is probably negative.
Yeah.
Again, though, translating environmental science into environmental action
policy
by government is often quite difficult. Particularly in this case because it runs across 3 states. So you would have to have Queensland, New South Wales and South Australia all agree to do the same thing because you can't go, right, well, Queensland's going to tear it down. Well, and so, I'm sure those dingoes don't cross state borders.
They'll just be sitting at the edge, going around the corner of the fence.
Exactly.
We're in.
Woohoo! Welcome to Queensland.
I always wondered that. I'd seen some photos of the Great Wall in China when it gets into the ocean. And I guess there were probably people manning the wall and keeping people away. But I was always like, why don't the people just go into the water and just go around the edge of the...
Row a little dinghy around the corner.
Exactly.
We're there.
Just walk.
Yes.
Anyway, all right. Good episode, guys. Don't forget, if you want the transcripts for these episodes, guys, and the members-only episodes, make sure that you sign up for the Premium Podcast or the Academy. And for everything else, check out Aussie English. See you later.
Bye.
Alrighty, you mob, thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode of The Goss. If you would like to watch the video, if you're currently listening to it and not watching it, you can do so on the Aussie English channel on YouTube. You'll be able to subscribe to that. Just search Aussie English on YouTube. And if you're watching this and not listening to it, you can check this episode out also on the Aussie English podcast, which you can find via my free Aussie English podcast application on both Android and iPhone. You can download that for free, or you can find it via any other good podcast app that you've got on your phone. Spotify, podcasts from iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is. I'm your host, Pete. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a ripper of a day, and I will see you next time. Peace!